She was not supposed to be in Seoul. That was the first thing. She was supposed to be in Accra, standing in a fitting room with her mother, arguing about whether ivory or champagne was a more forgiving color for a woman who had not eaten properly in 3 months because of wedding stress. She was thinking about David. Specifically, she was thinking about the fact that David's family business, Park Holdings, had been in litigation for 2 years over a land acquisition dispute, and she was the attorney who had kept them protected. She had spent 14 months building a defense strategy that had made 3 different opposing counsels back down. She had turned down a partnership offer at one of Seoul's top firms, Shin & Associates, to stay on the Park Holdings brief. She had done all of this because David had asked her to, because he had held her hand and told her that she was the only person he trusted, that her intelligence was the most attractive thing about her, that he could not imagine building what he was building without her beside him. What he had been building, apparently, was a family, just not with her. Hannah picked up her water. She was not going to cry in the Kang Grand Lobby bar. She had decided this already. She would cry later, in a country where she knew the streets, in her own apartment, in her own bathroom, with the shower running so her neighbor could not hear. She was allowed that. She would take that later. Right now she needed to think. And then the man sat down 2 seats away from her, and the thinking became briefly impossible. Not because he was loud. He was the opposite of loud. He moved into the seat the way very dangerous things move, with a quietness that should not belong to someone that size. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark suit that had clearly been made specifically for his body by someone who took that responsibility seriously. His face was sharp and still and Korean and somewhere in his early 30s, and he had the particular expression of a man who had not smiled recently and was not planning to start tonight. He did not look at her. He ordered whiskey, neat, from the bartender, who treated him with the specific, careful respect of someone who knows exactly who they are serving and has made a decision about how much eye contact is appropriate. Hannah looked back at her water. 2 minutes passed. Then the man said, without turning his head, "You've looked at that photograph 4 times since you sat down." Hannah's hand went still on her glass. She turned her head slowly. He was still looking forward, the whiskey untouched in front of him, his profile like something carved from patience and cold weather. "Excuse me," she said. "The one in your clutch." He picked up the whiskey. "You keep touching the clasp. You've opened it 4 times. You haven't taken anything out. You're either checking that it's still there or deciding whether to burn it." Hannah stared at him. She was a lawyer. She had cross-examined some of the most composed liars in corporate Korea, and she had a finely calibrated sense of when someone was performing versus when they were simply, unervingly, paying attention. This man was paying attention. "I don't know you," she said. "No." He took a slow drink. "But you're sitting in my hotel." The information landed quietly. Hannah looked around the bar, at the staff who moved with the precise, trained deference of people who understood accountability to a single person, at the bartender who had not once looked in this man's direction since serving him, at the small framed photograph on the far wall, a building at night, the words Kang Group in gold underneath. "Oh," she thought. "Kang Seo Jun," she said. He looked at her then, just turned his head and looked at her with eyes that were very dark and very direct and gave absolutely nothing away. He looked at her the way people look at things they find unexpectedly interesting and are not yet sure what to do about that. "You know my name," he said. "I'm a corporate attorney. I've been in Seoul for 6 weeks. Your name comes up in most rooms I sit in." She met his gaze without flinching because she was Hannah and she did not flinch, usually preceded by a very specific silence. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. Closer to the acknowledgement that a smile existed as a concept. "What kind of silence?" he asked. "The kind that means everyone in the room knows something they've collectively decided not to say out loud." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You're good at reading rooms. It's what I'm paid for." "Who pays you?" And there it was. Hannah looked down at her clutch. The question sat in the air between them, and she thought about David asleep upstairs with his secrets and his side piece and 7 months of a life he had built while she was building his defense, and she felt something settle in her chest. Not grief exactly. Something colder than grief. Something that felt like clarity. "Currently," she said. "No one." She did not plan what happened next. She would tell herself that for weeks afterward. She did not plan it. She was not the kind of woman who made decisions at midnight in hotel bars based on one conversation and one very clear-eyed man sitting 2 seats away. But she had been a lawyer long enough to know that the best cases were not won through months of careful preparation alone. Sometimes you won because you recognized the exact moment when the room shifted and you moved before anyone else did. "I need a favor," she said. Kang Seo Jun looked at her. "Not that kind," she said quickly, and watched the almost smile almost happen again. "I need information. Specifically, I need to know whether a company called Park Holdings has any outstanding exposure that hasn't reached public record yet." The bar was very quiet. "Park Holdings," he repeated. "Yes. David Park's family company." Hannah did not ask how he knew David. In Seoul, at this level, everyone knew David, or knew of him, or had a file on him. "Yes," she said. She opened her clutch. She took out the photograph. She set it on the bar between them, face up, and she did not look at it. He looked at it. His eyes moved across it with the unhurried precision of someone absorbing information, and then he looked back up at her. "How long?" he asked. "I don't know. Long enough for 7 months. "And your wedding?" 17 days. Silence. "You're not upset," he said. "Not an accusation. An observation." "I'm extremely upset," Hannah said calmly. "I'm choosing not to perform it in your lobby bar at midnight." This time the almost smile became something else. Brief and genuine, and quickly recovered. He reached forward and picked up the photograph. He looked at it once more. Then he placed it back in front of her. "Park Holdings has a problem," he said. Hannah went still. "It's been building for 18 months. An internal compliance breach, a series of undeclared payments to a government tender committee. Your client, and I use that loosely given what you've just told me, has been paying for contracts that were supposed to be competitive. Someone on the inside has been documenting it. A whistleblower who hasn't moved yet." Hannah's mind went absolutely silent for 1 second, and then began to run at full speed. 18 months. That was before she took the brief. That was before David had asked her to stay, to turn down the partnership, to trust him. "He knew," she said. It was not a question. If he's running the company, he knew. She sat with that for a moment. David had handed her a case knowing there was a buried compliance breach inside the company he was asking her to defend. He had used her expertise to build a wall around a secret she was not supposed to find. And then he had kept her close and kept her loyal with a ring and a wedding date and a future that was apparently always a performance. She picked up the photograph. She put it back in her clutch. She snapped the clasp shut. "What would it take," she said, "to bring Park Holdings down? Legally. Completely. Through channels that cannot be reversed." Seo Jun looked at her with those very dark, very direct eyes. "That depends," he said. "On what?" "On whether you have access to the case files you built for their defense." Hannah held his gaze. She had the files. 3 years of them. 14 months of deliberate, meticulous work that she now understood had been used against her. She had every thread of the defense strategy, and by extension, she had the map of exactly where the bodies were buried. A lawyer who builds your wall knows every weak point in it. "I have everything," she said. The bar hummed quietly around them. Seoul pressed against the glass outside, indifferent and glittering. Kang Seo Jun picked up his whiskey. "Then I think," he said, "we should talk properly. If you are new here, welcome, bestie. Please like this video, share it with someone who needs a good story tonight. Subscribe so you never miss what comes next, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you are watching from. The best reading community in the world is right here, and we are just getting started." They moved to a private room off the lobby. Not a boardroom, not a suite, just a small dark sitting room that clearly existed for exactly this kind of conversation, the kind that needed walls and no witnesses. A staff member appeared with fresh water and a second glass of whiskey without being asked and disappeared again so efficiently it was almost philosophical. Hannah sat across from Seo Jun with a low table between them. She had taken off her heels and placed them neatly to one side because she thought better without that particular discomfort. And she noted that he registered this small act of practicality with the same quiet attention he had given everything else about her so far. She told him everything. Not out of impulse, not out of the particular recklessness of a woman who has just had her world upended, but because she had assessed the situation, she had assessed the man, and she had decided that in this room at this hour, she had more to gain from honesty than strategy. She told him about the Park Holdings brief, about the 14 months, about the compliance structure she had built and the discovery process she had navigated and the 3 opposing counsels she had seen off. She told him about the partnership offer she had declined and why. She told him about the moment this evening when she had found the photograph in the jacket pocket and had stood in the corridor and breathed. She did not tell him how she felt. That was not the conversation they were having. But she told him every material fact, and she watched him listen with a stillness that she was beginning to understand was not coldness but concentration. He was the kind of person who gave their complete attention and made you feel it. When she finished, he said, "The whistleblower's name is Cho Min-suk. He's a mid-level compliance officer at Park Holdings' Seoul branch. He's been sitting on documentation for 11 months because he's afraid. He has a family. He's been approached twice by David Park's people, and both times the conversation was framed as a friendly warning." Hannah's jaw tightened. He needs protection. He needs immunity and relocation and someone to go to the Financial Supervisory Service on his behalf before Park Holdings figures out he hasn't burned the documents like they told him to. "Can you do that?" Seo Jun looked at her. "I can do a great many things." "That's not an answer." "Yes," he said. "I can do that. What do you want in return?" The question sat between them, honest and direct, and she respected him enough not to dress it up. No one in this city at this level did anything without calculation. She was not naive about what this was. He leaned back. He turned the whiskey glass slowly between his fingers, and she noticed his hands, careful, precise, a small scar along the right knuckle that suggested a history he had not discussed. "Park Holdings has been blocking a land acquisition I've been building toward for 2 years, he said. "Not because the deal doesn't make sense. Because David Park's father decided 6 years ago that he didn't want Kang Group expanding into their territory, and he has been pulling political strings to make sure it stays blocked. Your case files contain documentation of those political relationships. Every favor, every connection, every undeclared payment. You built a defense, but what you actually built is a map." Hannah was quiet. "I want the map," he said. "I want it handled through the proper legal channels, FSS, the prosecutor's office, every institution that should have seen it 2 years ago. I want it clean. I want no fingerprints that make it look like a corporate attack." He paused. "I want it to look like exactly what it is. A betrayal of public trust by a family that has been buying its way through Seoul for 30 years. She studied him. "And what do I get?" "David Park loses everything," he said. "His company, his political cover, his family name's credibility. Whatever he was building with that woman in the photograph, he'll be building it from nothing." Hannah looked at her hands. It was a good offer. It was, she recognized with the calm professional part of her brain, an extraordinarily good offer. It was also the kind of offer that changed the shape of a person's life permanently, and she was sitting across from a man about whom the very specific silence of Seoul's rooms said volumes she had not yet fully read. "I need to know something first," she said. "Ask. The things the silence says about you in those rooms." She looked at him directly. "Are they true?" He did not look away. He held her gaze with the steadiness of someone who has made peace with every answer to that question. "Some of them," he said. "The ones that say I am dangerous are true. The ones that say I am careless are not. The ones that say I protect what belongs to me are true. The ones that say I am dishonest are not." A pause. "I have never made an agreement I did not keep." Hannah believed him. She was not entirely sure that made her feel better, but she believed him. "I want one amendment to the arrangement," she said. "Go ahead. I handle the legal strategy myself. I file, I lead, I decide the timeline. You provide the whistleblower protection and the access to your political channels. But the case is mine. My name, my work, my calls." Something in his expression shifted. Respect, she thought, or the closest thing to it. "Agreed," he said. "Second Amendment." He tilted his head. "Whatever this is between us publicly, it is professional. A legal consultation, a working arrangement. Nothing that can be used to discredit the case or make it look personal." "Also agreed." She reached across the table and held out her hand. He looked at it for a brief moment, and in that moment she noticed something she would not be able to name until much later, something that moved behind those very dark eyes. Not calculation, but something quieter, something that had no business being in a conversation about whistleblowers and corporate fraud and revenge. Then he took her hand. His grip was firm and warm and completely professional, and Hannah told herself that the particular steadiness she felt in the moment their hands met was simply the satisfaction of a good agreement made clearly. She let go first. She put her heels back on. She stood. "I'll have the relevant file sections prepared by tomorrow evening," she said. I'll need Cho Min-suk's contact information and confirmation that your people have eyes on him tonight. You'll have it within the hour." She nodded once. She picked up her clutch. "One more thing," he said. She stopped. "Where are you staying tonight?" "Here." A pause. "Same floor as David, unfortunately." Seo Jun reached into his jacket and placed a keycard on the table. "There's a suite on the 14th floor. It's kept available. Use it tonight." Hannah looked at the keycard. "That's not necessary," she said. "You have a meeting with me at 8 tomorrow morning," he said. "It's more efficient." She almost said no. She was very close to saying no. And then she thought about going back upstairs and lying 3 meters from David in the dark and pretending to sleep while her mind ran at full speed, and she picked up the keycard. "Thank you," she said. "Good night, Miss Hannah." She walked to the door. She stopped with her hand on the frame. "Kang Seo Jun," she said without turning. "Yes." "Why did you offer me the room? You didn't have to do that." A pause. Not the calculating kind. The kind where something true is being considered. "Because," he said, "you have not cried once since you sat at my bar holding a photograph that would have broken most people, and that kind of discipline deserves somewhere quiet to be alone in." Hannah stood in the doorway for 1 second. Then she walked out. She did not cry in the elevator. She cried in the 14th floor suite, in the bathroom, with the shower running. And when she was done, she washed her face, changed into the hotel robe, opened her laptop, and began pulling the Park Holdings files. By 2 in the morning, she had a folder. By 4, she had a strategy. By 6, she had a draft filing that made her own chest tighten because it was the best legal work she had ever produced, and it was going to destroy 3 years of her life's investment along with the man who had made it necessary. At 7:55, she knocked on the door of the Kang Group executive suite on the 22nd floor. The door opened before she could knock twice. Seo Jun was already dressed, already on a call, already mid-sentence in Korean that he ended without ceremony when he saw her. He gestured her inside. She walked in and set her laptop on the conference table and opened the folder, and he sat across from her with coffee she had not asked for placed at her elbow, and they began. He was good. She had expected competence. What she had not expected was this: the way he moved through information, the way he caught implications before she finished stating them, the way he asked questions that indicated he had not just read the brief, but had already thought 3 steps past it. He did not perform intelligence. He simply had it and deployed it without theater. She found herself arguing with him twice in the first hour, once about sequencing and once about which authority to approach first. Both times he listened to her counter, reconsidered, and in the first case conceded, and in the second case held his position with reasoning that she reluctantly found sound. She did not concede out loud. She moved on. He did not point it out, which elevated her opinion of him by several degrees. They worked for 4 hours straight. At some point, she stopped thinking of him as dangerous. Not because she forgot what the silence in room said about him, but because in this room, in this work, he was simply the most focused and capable person she had ever sat across a table from, and her mind had the professional habit of categorizing people by what they could do. What Kang Seo Jun could do, it turned out, was considerable. By noon, they had a timeline. Cho Min-suk had been reached through Seo Jun's people at 6 in the morning, before Hannah had even arrived. He was frightened. He was ready. He had the documents. He needed a lawyer and a promise and a clear path forward. "I want to speak with him today," Hannah said. Seo Jun was already reaching for his phone. She arranged to meet Cho Min-suk that afternoon at a location Seo Jun's security team had cleared. She spent the 40 minutes before the meeting reviewing everything she knew about his situation, his exposure, his family, what he needed to hear, and in what order. She did not see David all day. David called at noon. She looked at the phone, sent it to voicemail, and went back to her files. He called again at 2. Again at 3. At 3:15, he sent a message that said, "Where are you? I've been asking the front desk. Are you okay?" She almost laughed. Not from humor. From the particular bleakness of a person who has been caught and does not know it yet. She texted back, "Fine. Working. See you tonight." She needed him calm for 2 more days. Just 2 more days until the filing was ready, and Cho Min-suk was protected, and the thing was in motion and could not be stopped. She could be professional for 2 more days. She had been professional for 3 years under considerably more trying circumstances. The meeting with Cho Min-suk lasted 2 hours. He was a small man in his late 30s who kept his hands flat on the table like he was bracing for a collision. He had the haunted look of someone who had been carrying a secret long enough that the weight of it had changed the shape of him. Hannah was gentle and precise, and she did not rush him, and she told him clearly and specifically what her plan was, and what protection looked like, and what his family's options were. By the end of the 2 hours he was calmer. Not calm, but calmer. On the way back to the hotel, she sat in the back of the car that Seo Jun had arranged without asking, and looked out at Seoul in the early evening, and felt the particular exhaustion of someone who has been running on adrenaline and discipline for 18 hours. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered. Your filing structure is sound, Seo Jun said. But you need to add the 2021 payment records to Section 3. The FSS will ask for them, and it's cleaner to front-load than to supplement. I had the same thought, she said. I was going to add them tonight. A pause. You should eat, he said. Hannah blinked. Of all the things she had expected Kang Seo Jun to say to her. I'll eat. There's food in the suite. I had it sent up. She looked at the phone. You had food sent to my room, she said. You worked through breakfast and lunch, and you have a 2-hour filing session ahead of you. A beat. It's not complicated. Eat. She opened her mouth. She closed it. Thank you, she said. Call me if you get stuck on Section 3. He ended the call. Hannah stared at the screen for a moment, and then looked back out the window at Seoul, at all those lights, at that city that had absolutely nothing to do with her plan, but that was beginning to feel, in some small, unexamined way, like somewhere she was supposed to be. Then she thought about David upstairs and the food Seo Jun had sent, and the case she was building, and she straightened up and told herself very firmly to stay focused. She was focused. She absolutely was. The food was very good. She ate at the desk while she worked because she had no time for tables and sentiment, and she finished Section 3 by 9 and Section 4 by 11 and sent the updated draft to Seo Jun at 11:15. His response came back at 11:22. 3 words. This will work. Hannah sat back in the chair. She looked at the ceiling. She thought about 3 years. She thought about the partnership she had declined. She thought about 14 months of case files, and every late night, and every canceled personal plan, and every moment she had chosen his career over her own trajectory. Then she thought about the look on Seo Jun's face when he had listened to her argue the sequencing point and had actually considered it rather than dismissing it, because he had thought of something first. She was not thinking about him romantically. She was absolutely not doing that. She was thinking about him professionally. She went to sleep at midnight. David knocked on her door at 7 the next morning. She had moved her things to the 14th floor suite the previous evening, and David did not know the number. But she had left a message at the front desk to redirect him, because she needed this conversation and she needed to have it on her terms. She opened the door in her hotel robe with a cup of tea in her hand, and David standing in the corridor, looking slightly rumpled and very concerned. He was handsome. She had always found him handsome. There was no use pretending otherwise. He had easy charm and a warm face and the particular confidence of a man who had never been told no by anything that mattered. And for 3 years Hannah had interpreted that confidence as strength. She understood now that it was not strength. It was simply the absence of consequence. Why did you switch rooms? He said. I needed quiet for the case, she said. Come in. He came in. He looked around the suite, the laptop open on the desk, the stacked files, the coffee cup from the room service tray that Seo Jun had sent the night before. You've been working this whole time? He said. Yes. Hannah, I feel like something is off. You haven't really been present this week. She picked up her tea. She looked at him over the rim. She could tell him now. She had the photograph. She had the compliance case. She had everything. She could end this in this room in 30 seconds. But the filing was not ready. Cho Min-suk was not yet fully protected. And Hannah did not blow up her own strategy for the satisfaction of a scene. I'm just tired, she said. Big week. Can we talk tonight? Properly. David's expression relaxed. He reached for her hand. She let him take it because she was very good at composure when the situation required it. And the situation required it for exactly 36 more hours. Tonight, he said. I'll book somewhere nice. We need that. Yes, she said. We do. He kissed her cheek and left. Hannah stood very still for a moment after the door closed. She set down her tea. She sat at the desk. She opened her laptop. She did not think about the kiss on the cheek or the hand holding or 3 years of believing someone. She thought about Section 5. She opened the file, and she started to work. At 10 she met Seo Jun in the executive suite. He was in a different suit. Same quality, same precision. He looked at her when she walked in, and she noticed, not for the first time, that he looked at her the way he looked at the case files. With complete attention and no performance. If you haven't liked and subscribed yet, now would be the time, because what is about to happen next is the kind of thing you do not want to miss. Drop a comment right now and tell me, did you see this coming? Cho Min-suk, she said, before she sat down. I need the immunity arrangement confirmed in writing before 5 today. It's already drafted, he said. My legal team sent it to his counsel at 9. He has counsel? He does now. The barest pause. I arranged it this morning. Hannah sat down slowly. She looked at him. You arranged his lawyer, she said. He needed one before yours became a conflict of interest. It's cleaner this way. She thought about that. It was cleaner. It was also extremely thorough for someone who had technically agreed only to provide whistleblower protection in general terms. He had already thought past the step she was on. You've done this before, she said. Not the compliance filing. The broader thing. The orchestrated dismantling. He met her eyes. Yes, he said. Not an apology. Not pride. Just a fact, offered honestly. How many times? Enough to be good at it. She held his gaze for a long moment. Have you always had a reason? She asked. Or just the capability? It was a real question. She needed a real answer. He was quiet. Not the calculating quiet. The kind where something true was being considered from multiple angles before it was handed over. Always a reason, he said. The capability without a reason is just destruction. I'm not interested in destruction for its own sake. What are you interested in? The question came out softer than she intended. It was not a professional question. She registered that a fraction of a second after she asked it. Seo Jun looked at her. Something moved across his expression so quickly she might have imagined it. Correction, he said. When something has been built on something rotten, I'm interested in the correction. She held his gaze. So am I, she said quietly. The day moved fast after that. There was a rhythm to it that felt efficient and almost comfortable. The two of them working through the case like two instruments that had been playing separately and had found without planning to that they were in the same key. She drafted. He reviewed. She revised. He caught the things she had missed. She caught the things he had dismissed too quickly. And at some point in the mid-afternoon, she looked across the table at him and found him already looking at her, and neither of them immediately looked away. She looked away first. At 4:30 his phone rang. He took the call, walked to the window, spoke in low, rapid Korean for 3 minutes. When he came back his expression had changed. Not dramatically, but she was beginning to learn the degrees of his face. There's a problem, he said. She waited. David Park knows Cho Min-suk has been in contact with an attorney. He doesn't know the details yet, but he's moving. He's called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. If they reach Min-suk before the immunity paperwork is filed, they'll pressure him into retracting. Hannah stood. Then we file tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight. The FSS office closes at 6. I know someone, she said. She was already reaching for her phone. Give me 20 minutes. She called a contact at the Financial Supervisory Service, a woman named Young Hyun who had been on the other side of 2 of Hannah's cases and had respected her enough to keep the number. She explained the situation in precise, careful terms. She did not oversell. She presented the facts. Young Hyun was quiet for a long moment. Miss Hannah, she said, if the documentation is what you say it is, you need to file tonight. I'll have someone at the office until 9. Hannah exhaled. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just make sure it's clean. She ended the call and turned to find Seo Jun 3 feet away, watching her work with an expression she was not going to name. 9 o'clock, she said. He looked at her for a moment. I'll have the car ready. They spent the next 3 hours in the hardest, most focused work of Hannah's professional life. Every document cross-referenced, every number verified, every claim anchored to evidence, so clean it could not be questioned. She had never filed anything she was more certain of. She had also never worked this hard in partnership with someone, and found that the collaboration made her sharper rather than slower. At 8:30 they got in the car. They drove through Seoul in the dark. Hannah had the files on her laptop and a printed backup in a folder on her lap, and she was running through the structure in her head one final time. Seo Jun was looking out the window. The city moved past him, glass and light, and that particular Seoul darkness that was never quite dark because the city had too much to say. After this, he said, not turning from the window, what do you do? Hannah looked at her folder. After this is filed? Yes. She thought about it. She thought about Accra. About her apartment with the good light and the neighbor who had been watering her plants for 6 weeks. She thought about Shin and Associates and whether the partnership offer was still on the table or whether she had burned that bridge by staying on a case that was about to become notorious. I don't know yet, she said honestly. He looked at her then. Window-lit Seoul behind him, the particular focused weight of his attention on her face. You're good at this, he said. What you did today? The contact, the timing, the file structure. That's not just competence. That's instinct. Hannah looked at him. He was not flattering her. He was reporting an observation the same way he reported everything, directly and without excess. Thank you, she said. Seoul has better work for someone like you than defending the Park family. She felt something stir at that. Not professionally. Something warmer than professional. She set it aside immediately. I'll keep that in mind, she said. The FSS building came into view. They filed at 8:58. Hannah stood in the corridor of the Financial Supervisory Service at 9:04 at night with the filed receipt in her hand and the particular lightness of someone who has just completed the heaviest lifting of their life, and she breathed. Seo Jun stood beside her. Neither of them spoke for a moment. It's done, she said. The first part, he said. The hearing will take weeks. His lawyers will fight it. They'll lose. Yes. A pause. They'll lose. She looked at the receipt. 3 years of her life, reduced and restructured and filed in the proper legal channel where it could not be buried. David Park was going to lose his company, his cover, his family's reputation. He was going to lose it because he had taken the one person who knew all of his secrets and had made the mistake of treating her as a permanent convenience. She felt something. Not triumph exactly. Quieter than triumph. The feeling of a door closing cleanly behind you on something you had already let go of. I have to tell him tonight, she said. David. I can't let him find out from the news. I have to tell him myself. Seo Jun looked at her. That's not required, he said. Legally. Professionally. I know. She slid the receipt into her folder. I'm not doing it legally. I'm doing it because I was with him for 3 years and whatever he did, I'm not the kind of person who lets someone find out something like this from a headline. The silence that followed was the warmest silence she had experienced in his company. Do you want me to wait? He said. She looked at him. You don't need to do that, she said. I know. He did not move toward the exit. Do you want me to wait? Hannah looked at Kang Seo Jun in the corridor of the Financial Supervisory Service building at 9:06 on a Wednesday night and thought about how she had sat in his lobby bar 36 hours ago with a photograph and no plan and a discipline that had not yet cracked. And somehow between then and now something had built itself out of nothing in the peripheral space of a professional arrangement, and she did not entirely know what to do about that. Yes, she said. Wait. He nodded once. He sat down on the corridor bench outside the exit, and he took out his phone, and she walked to her car and called David. He answered on the second ring. Hannah, where are you? I've been trying to reach you since this afternoon. I made a reservation for 8, but you weren't responding, and I just thought, I don't know. I'm starting to feel like something is seriously wrong between us. There is, she said. Silence. I need you to come to the hotel lobby. Not the room. The lobby. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Hannah. 20 minutes, David. She ended the call. She sat in the car, and she did the breathing thing, and she was steady. The conversation with David lasted 11 minutes. She told him she knew. She showed him the photograph. She told him about the filing. She did it in the lobby of the Con Grand, in 2 chairs near the far window, in the low voice of someone who has thought very carefully about what they are going to say and has decided not to waste a single word. David went through 4 expressions in 11 minutes. Shock, guilt, calculation. And then, at the very end, when she told him about the filing, something that was not quite anger, but was its colder, more dangerous cousin. You did this, he said. You built this case for 3 years, and then you used it against me. I built the case honestly, she said. You built the problem before I arrived. Who helped you? You couldn't have accessed the compliance breach on your own. Hannah stood. She smoothed her dress. You told me my intelligence was the most attractive thing about me, she said. That turned out to be one true thing in a great many lies. Good night, David. She walked away. She did not look back. She walked out of the lobby and down the 3 steps to the street where Seo Jun's car was parked, and Seo Jun was leaning against it with his phone in his hand, and he looked up when she came out, and he assessed her in one look the way he assessed everything, and he said nothing for a moment. How did he take it, he said. He tried to make it about me, she said, for about 45 seconds. And then he remembered who he was talking to. Something in Seo Jun's face did the almost smile thing. The driver opened the door. They got in. Seoul moved past the windows again in that relentless, glittering way, and Hannah sat back in the seat and let the tension of the last 36 hours rest for the first time and thought, with some surprise, that she was fine. Not okay. Not healed. Fine, in the sense that she was still herself, still intact, still exactly the woman she had been before any of this, which was a version of herself she intended to keep. Where would you like to go? Seo Jun said. She thought about the 14th floor suite. She thought about Accra. She thought about Shin and Associates and the partnership that might or might not still be a possibility. She thought about 3 years and how they could compress into 36 hours of clarity if the circumstances were sharp enough. I don't know yet, she said honestly. Again, he was quiet for a moment. Then, the contract we made in the bar, he said. It's complete. The filing is done. Cho Min-suk is protected. Everything I agreed to. Yes, she said. It is. The arrangement is over, he said. Yes. A pause. The city moved outside. I'm having dinner tomorrow, he said. Alone. At 8. There's a place in Jongno I go when I want to think without being watched. I was going to say there's a case development we should discuss, but that would be a reason I'm manufacturing. Hannah turned her head. He was looking forward. Not at her. His jaw was set in that particular way, and his hands were still, and he was, she understood with a clarity that surprised her, not performing composure. He was genuinely uncertain. For the first time since she had met him, she could see it. That small fracture in the absolute stillness. That almost invisible thing that was not coldness at all, but the very careful management of something much warmer underneath. Just dinner, he said. No contract. No arrangement. No case. He paused. If you want. Hannah looked at him. She thought about the food sent to her room. The bench where he had waited outside the FSS building. This will work, at 11:22 at night. The way he had told her she was good at this without decoration or performance. She thought about 3 years of being with someone who had looked at her every day and seen a tool. She thought about 36 hours with someone who had looked at her and seen a person. Tomorrow at 8, she said. Send me the address. He looked at her then. That direct, complete attention, and underneath it something unguarded, something she was not yet sure she had a right to name. I'll send it, he said. The car moved through Seoul, and the city pressed against the glass, and Hannah looked out at it, and felt, quietly, and without ceremony, something that she had not expected to feel for a very long time. Possibility. She did not examine it. She just let it sit there, which was perhaps why she did not see what was coming. Because David Park had not gone upstairs after she walked away. David Park had stood in the lobby of the Kang Grand for 3 minutes after she left. And then he had made a phone call. Not to his lawyer. Not to his father. To a man whose name moved through certain rooms in Seoul the way Kang Seo Jun's name moved through others. Quietly, and with a very specific kind of weight. A man who dealt in the kind of pressure that did not go through proper channels. A man who owed the Park family a very old debt. And that man, at 9:37 on a Wednesday night, had picked up the phone and said one sentence. Find out who she's working with. And make sure it stops. Comment below right now, and I need to know. Did you think David was going to let this go quietly? Because I promise you, what happens next is something none of us saw coming. Subscribe and hit that notification bell because part 2 drops soon, and you do not want to come back and find everyone in the comments already knows what happened while you were gone. The following morning, Hannah woke at 6 with the particular alertness of someone whose instincts had filed something away while they slept. She checked her phone. No messages from Seo Jun. No messages from David. One message from Cho Min-suk's new counsel confirming the immunity paperwork had been received and acknowledged. She made tea. She sat by the window. She looked at Seoul in the early light and thought about dinner at 8 and told herself she was not going to overthink it. At 7:15, Seo Jun's driver appeared in the hotel lobby with an envelope and her name on it. Inside was a single page. A research brief, 3 paragraphs, marked urgent at the top. She read it once. She read it again. Then she called Seo Jun. He answered immediately. You got it. When did you get this? An hour ago. My people monitor the Park family's communication channels. David made a call last night, 30 minutes after you left the lobby. To who? A pause. A man named Baek Jun Seo. He operates outside of legal frameworks. He's been associated with 3 cases in the last decade where key witnesses either recanted or disappeared before a hearing. The room went very quiet around Hannah. He's targeting Cho Min-suk, she said. That would be the logical move. Min-suk is the only witness who can confirm the undeclared payments in testimony. The filing has the documents, but testimony strengthens it considerably. We need to move Min-suk today, right now. My team is already at his location. A pause. Hannah. It was the first time he had used only her name. Without Mississippi. Just her name, and something in the way he said it made her set down her tea. There's a second name in the brief, he said. She looked back at the page. She had stopped at Baek Jun Seo. She read the second paragraph now. Her own name. Her address in Accra. Her usual hotel in Seoul. Her gym schedule. Her mother's address. Someone had compiled a file on Hannah in the 12 hours since she had filed with the FSS. She sat very still. He moved fast, she said. Her voice was level. Her hands were not. He did. Seo Jun's voice was different now. Not colder exactly. More concentrated. The way she imagined a very precise instrument sounded when it had found its purpose. I need you to listen to me carefully. I'm listening. Do not leave the hotel without calling me first. Not for coffee, not for air, not for anything. My people are outside the building, but I need to know your movements. You're putting security on me. I'm putting security on you. She wanted to object. She was a lawyer, not a liability, and she had managed her own safety for 34 years without a bodyguard detail. But she was also a lawyer, and the brief in her hand was very clear about what Baek Jun Seo did to key players in cases that threatened the Park family's interests. Okay, she said. A pause. Like he had expected more resistance, and the absence of it meant something. Okay, he said. What are you doing about Min-suk? Relocating him this morning. He'll be in a secure location by noon. I want to speak with him before you move him. 10 minutes. My driver will take you. You do not go alone. Understood. Another pause. Are you frightened? He asked. Not professionally. Something quieter. Hannah looked at her hands. They had stopped shaking. She had made them stop shaking by force of will in the same way she had made herself not cry in the lobby bar 2 nights ago. The particular discipline of a woman who had learned early that the world did not soften for visible fear. Yes, she said. Because it was the truth and she had decided, somewhere in the last 36 hours, that this was a person she could be truthful with. Good, he said. Not unkindly. It means you understand the situation. I'll see you in 20 minutes. He ended the call. Hannah sat by the window. Seoul was fully awake now, trams and commuters, and that particular morning energy of a city that never quite stopped, even when it was pretending to sleep. She thought about Baek Jun Seo and the file with her mother's address in it. She thought about the man who had listened to her argue a sequencing point and had actually considered it. She thought about dinner at 8, which now felt like something that belonged to a different, simpler version of yesterday. She dressed. She packed her case files into her bag. She sent a message to her contact in Accra, a 3-line check-in that was also a veiled instruction to her assistant to implement their emergency protocol, a procedure she had put in place 2 years ago after a particularly volatile case and had hoped never to use. Then she knocked twice on the suite door, and the security detail that had apparently materialized outside her room at some point in the last hour acknowledged her, and she walked with them to the elevator and down to the lobby and into the car that was waiting. And she was Hannah, and she was not going to let David Park or Baek Jun Seo or anyone else make her feel like she had done something wrong by telling the truth. She was, however, going to be extremely careful. The meeting with Cho Min-suk was brief and hard. He was in a service apartment on the edge of Mapo District, 2 of Seo Jun's people outside the door and a 3rd on the street, and he looked worse than he had 2 days ago. He had not slept. His wife had taken the children to her sister's. He had a packed bag by the door. Hannah sat across from him, and she told him, in the clear, precise way she had developed for moments exactly like this, that what he was doing mattered. That the documentation he had preserved at great personal cost was the backbone of a case that would not exist without him. That the people moving against him were moving because they were afraid of exactly what he represented. She told him that Kang Seo Jun had committed resources to his protection that would not be withdrawn. And she told him, because he asked and he deserved honesty, that the next few weeks would be hard. He looked at her for a long time. Are you scared too? He asked. She thought about the file with her mother's address in it. Yes, she said. But I filed the case, and I'm not taking it back. So, he nodded slowly, like that meant something to him. Okay, he said. Okay. She squeezed his hand once, briefly and professionally, and she stood and she left. Seo Jun was in the car outside. She got in. She did not look at him immediately. She watched the door of the building until the two security men came out with Min Suk and a third car, and the car moved, and she tracked it until it turned the corner. He'll be okay, she said. He will. No qualification. Just the statement, delivered with the weight of someone who does not make promises they cannot keep. She looked at him. He was looking back at her with that complete attention, and somewhere underneath the careful stillness of his face was the thing she had seen last night in the car, that small unguarded fracture, and it was a little wider today. Dinner is still at 8, he said. Hannah blinked. We are currently managing a whistleblower relocation and a threat from a man who has made witnesses disappear, she said. I know. And you're talking about dinner. I am also managing the threat from a man who has made witnesses disappear, he said. I'm capable of both. She stared at him. You're not what I expected, she said. What did you expect? Something colder. He was quiet for a moment. The car moved through the streets of Seoul. I'm cold when the situation requires it, he said. It doesn't always require it. Hannah looked out the window. She thought about the food sent to her room, the bench outside the FSS building, the way he had said her name this morning on the phone. 8 o'clock, she said. The almost smile. They rode back to the hotel in a silence that was not uncomfortable, and the city moved around them, and the case was in motion and the danger was real, and somewhere in the distance David Park was realizing that the woman he had treated as a permanent convenience had turned out to have a great deal more moves than he had accounted for. And in the lobby of the Kang Grand, as Hannah stepped out of the car and turned to confirm the security arrangements for the afternoon, a man in a gray jacket who had been reading a newspaper near the entrance for the past 40 minutes folded it carefully, stood up, and walked out through the side door. He made a call. She's back, he said. And she's with him. A pause on the line. Good, said the voice on the other end. Let them have tonight. A longer pause. What about tomorrow? The line went quiet for 3 seconds. 4. 5. And then the voice said something that, had Hannah been able to hear it, would have changed everything. Would have made her understand that the threat was not what she thought it was. That the danger was not coming from the direction she was watching. That the case she had filed and the man she was having dinner with and the deal she had made in a hotel bar at midnight were all connected by something older and deeper and far more dangerous than a land acquisition and a family company and a fiancé who had made a very stupid mistake. But she could not hear it. She was walking into the hotel with her files and her steadiness and her plan, and she did not yet know what she was walking into. She would know by morning, and it would change everything. Subscribe right now and turn on your notifications because part 2 is coming and I promise you it will make everything you just watched feel like the calm before the storm. Drop a comment below and tell me, who do you think was on that phone? Because I read every single one of your comments and the community that guesses closest always gets a shout out at the start of the next part. Do not sleep on this story.